Today, actually, as I mentioned, we are celebrating the International Youth Day. So, as we may notice in our continent, which is Africa, there is huge lack of international youth engagement in civic activities. We are representing 65% as young people from the population, from the whole population, and we are, let's say, we are the great partner of the change that will happen in in the future for the continent. That's why it is very important to be civically engaged. Civically engaged means that we must be able to operate in many ways, whether economically speaking or politically speaking or also socially speaking. So, in order to make our voice, let's say, hearable for the leader, for the current leaders, and also to perform a positive change in our continent. So let's say that Africa is relying on us as young men and young women, and we have to be conscious of the importance of civic engagement to take part of this process of being active in our communities through NGOs, through citizenship improvement, and also this process of being able to address our voice through electoral processes or political issues, and also through participating in making policies. So before we're gonna start, I'm gonna just present what is YALDA and what we are performing actually. So YALDA is Youth Alliance for Leadership and Development. It is one of the international organizations of the NGOs that are acting for the development in Africa. But the specificity about YALDA is that it's exclusively by Youth for Youth Africans. So we have members that are between 18 and 30 years old, and we aim to promote these members and also the young Africans through networking platform that we are creating. So it's a networking platform that will join whether professionals, the young students, the young graduates that have projects for the development in Africa. So we are implementing in many African countries and also in the United States and in the United Kingdom. And mainly the NGO is composed by young Africans that feel sort of heartfelt for their continent and that want to contribute effectively to its development. Our main goals, first of all, is to foster communication between the whole young Africans. So this communication should lead to many projects that must be led by young Africans from different countries, not only one, to maybe replicate some projects we have in some African countries to the others, and also to promote the cooperation between all the African countries in order to help the African community, to reach its development. We are talking right now about the huge potential of development of our continent. So, and we are realizing one of the most important economic growth in the world. And I think, in my point of view, and also in the point of view of YALDA's member globally, we are, as young people, partner of this change, and we must contribute to reach that potential. We must contribute to be able one day to defend our land with our project. So another time, I would like to thank you for your presence. And now we can move to the presentation of the subject, which is Youth Civic Engagement in Africa, Challenges and Expectations. And as a keynote speaker, we have Mrs. Bukamu Bilela, which was the women chairman of YALDA International. She's very active in Africa, and she had a lot of experiences in Africa through his engagement with many African companies and also with the United Nations, some departments in the United States Nations. So through her experiences, she acquired a lot of maturity in terms of youth issues because she's young, and also because of her experience with directly on the ground in Africa working on many projects of development, whether for women, whether for young men, whether for some social issues and humanitarian things. So I think I'm gonna let her present the subject and to to tell us what is important about youth civic engagement in Africa and what are the issues that we can have as young people who wants to be civically engaged in Africa, and what is the outcomes that we can generate as a continent and also as a person from this engagement.
For organizing this webinar, and thank you attendees for being present as well. It is really, really great to be able to come together on this special day of the youth International Youth Day to just celebrate as young people what this means to us and for the future of the African continent. One of the things that you should know is that Youth Day was actually created in 1999 by the United Nations in order to celebrate the young people and to further encourage them and governments to include young people in the development of the world and what the world is doing. Suleiman, my computer is absolutely refusing to open my PowerPoint. I don't know if you can open it on your side. So one of the things that he has said is that as young people on the continent, we represent the majority of people, and we have the most youthful population of anywhere else in the world. But having a youthful population is also can be seen as a good thing, but a lot of people also see it as a bad thing. That if you do not engage the energies of young people, they tend to have so much energy, they can tend to use it in the wrong way. So how is it that you can continue to engage them and then have them feel as both contributors and beneficiaries of the development of this phenomenal continent of ours? Young people continue to suffer from numerous challenges as unemployment, poverty, low levels of civic engagement, which makes them easily manipulated by politicians. And moreover, as young people, we are not consciously actively engaged or wanting to find out more about how we can be engaged. It is said that studies done by the UNFPA that we have the lowest numbers in terms of voting, in terms of engaging in civil society, etc. How does that be? It's something we should question ourselves as young people, is that we are the majority of the population, yet we ourselves are not being engaged. And one of the things that speaks to this number is that, we're looking at the webinar, and so many people signed up, but where are they, kind of thing. So this is another thing that consciously we want things to happen for us, we want things to get done, but then we sit back and wait for somebody else to do it, and then we get mad, and then we try and find our own maybe not so good ways to do things, if I can put it that way. So a question we need to ask ourselves, a second question we need to ask ourselves is that, are we necessarily sidelined from participating in politics, social, economy, etc.? Or maybe it is us who sideline ourselves. Are we actually putting ourselves out there in order to participate? And that's one thing I always ask YALDA people all the time, is that, are you waiting for people to feed you, or are you going out there to plant, to grow things so you can feed yourself? And I think that is one of the things that we young people at YALDA strive to encourage you other young people to say, what is it that you are doing in order for you to be engaged, civilly engaged. So we are struggling with my presentation in terms of putting it up, but that's not a problem. I'm gonna try and open it.
I guess it's okay now.
Yeah, it is.
Got it?
Yeah, it's
Oh, great.
sure.
Okay. So awesome. So great. So I'm going to talk about three ways that youth can voice themselves or find their voice in terms of civil engagement, civic engagement. I mean, we've talked about Suleiman talked about how the socially, it's political and it's economic. So mainly what I'm going to talk about is the political social engagement. How can that happen? Because obviously with the economic engagement, there's a lot of talk on entrepreneurship and what young people can do in terms of entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of talk around that. But there also needs to be policies and programs that can facilitate the environment for young people to be entrepreneurs or to engage, to be part of the civic engagement. So the first, next slide, please. So the first way that young people can be involved is with civic engagement. Next slide. Yes, is youth being involved through in government or parliament in policy making itself. So we have seen examples of this in various African countries, which one of the African countries that comes to mind that has done a lot in terms of really including young people in terms of decisions, parliamentary decisions and policy making, is the government of Uganda, where they reserve a few seats. I cannot remember correctly, but I think it's around three or four for young people under the age of 30. I think this is really, really important. You know how parliaments have maybe certain seats in parliament to be 30 to 50% women, etc. So this parliament in Uganda has to have at least 3 seats reserved for young people under the age of 30. And this is great because this is how the voices of youth are heard in parliament, and it's not somebody carrying the message of the youth, but it's the youth themselves voicing their opinion, and their needs to the other parliamentarians, and they, because also they better understand what they need as young people. The other example that comes to my mind when I look at African governments that have tried to really incorporate youth and make sure they participate is the government of Botswana. What the government has recently set up is national youth representatives. If I may ask whoever is on the background to please mute their microphone because there's a lot of background noise. Um, but anyway, the government of Botswana has decided to put in youth representatives in every ministry in the country. So if you go to the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture, there's a youth desk that is there to address youth issues. So they're making an effort to ensure that youth issues are brought to the forefront in every ministry. And when policies made, the youth are also there and their needs are incorporated. So that is another example. But the governments of the African governments, as you know, they ratified the African Youth Charter, which was drafted in 2006, and we adopted it in 2006 November 1st, which became the celebrated as Africa Youth Day, which we are also going to celebrate in a couple of months as Africa Youth Day, as today is the International Youth Day. But an important thing to note is that the Africa Youth Charter serves as a document that guides African governments and guides us as youth with what it is that governments and we ourselves as young people should be doing to make sure that we are positively contributing to the development of our continent or to our lives and the lives of other people around us. So the African Youth Charter is a guide that has been developed by the youth for the youth. And what it does, it also serves to inform policy making at a national and regional level on the African continent. And a lot of this document has been used by African governments right now to formulate youth policies. And you have seen since 2006, my government, the government of Botswana, established the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture. You have seen concerted effort by African governments to engage young people by the establishment of ministries of youth, or separating ministries of, because they used to have ministry of women, youth, then separating those into two separate entities so that youth really get the voice and the time and commitment from government that they need. Lastly, in terms of youth involved in government, parliament, and policy making, is national youth councils. A lot of African countries have started setting up national youth councils. Some of them already were in existence, and again, guided by this document, this policy document called the African Youth Charter. And so you have seen that national youth councils serve as an engine to gather the feedback or the concerns and the of the young people, and the national youth councils then are used as an avenue for the young people to state their grievances or talk about what it is they need as young people, how it is that our parliamentarians, our governments, ministries, you name it, can help us so we can be the best people we can be in society. So that's the first way, or the first, when I think of civic engagement, this is the first one that I see as the big elephant in the room, is as young people, are we participating in government? And if so, which avenues do we have to participate directly in government and government decision making and policy making? So at the end of when I've presented my 3 ways I see young people getting involved with civic engagement, then I will come wrap up and say what I see young people in different countries where maybe you do not have parliamentary seats or you don't have national youth councils, how I can see young people mobilizing in order to form these engines that enable us to be more engaged. So if we can go to the second slide. The second slide talks about youth involved in civil society and NGOs. So you find that since a lot of young people we cannot be voted in and it's into power, one, because we don't vote, two, because we don't put ourselves out there in order to be representatives of other young people, we're not engaged in politics, etc. One of the other ways is we are socially involved through civil society and NGOs. So this is another engine that we can use in order to participate effectively in our in developing policy or tools that can help us. Because civil society, when we meet as civil society or when we form NGOs, you are able to mobilize young people to address a particular need or an issue. For example, an NGO that works with disabled youth in city areas might find that disabled youth are discriminated against in universities or high schools because there are no ramps for these disabled youth to go up in the schools, etc. These young people, or universities, for example. So these young people who have started this NGO, they are able to engage their parliamentarians, their government officials to say, hey, we might not be there, we're not directly in parliament or policy making, but this is an issue of concern because we, the youth, disabled youth, or our friends who are disabled cannot easily come to class because the fact there are no ramps available. And that, yeah, I've seen young people who go out on social media to address these issues, to make it known, to go on radio, talk shows, going on television, just to make it known out there and getting the support of the population in general. Because we forget that even the older generation are our parents, and they actually do care about our welfare. So, and they care about the welfare of their grandchildren, which will be our children. So they definitely do care, and making them aware of what we are facing, but also showing them the solutions of what it is that we have thought about in terms of how we're going to solve our own problems. It doesn't help us all the time to be crying wolf, but at the same time you're running around outside waiting for the wolf to catch you. But what are you doing to build your brick house so that the wolf doesn't catch you unawares? So that's another thing that we need to think about when we think about civil society, NGOs, is that there are problems out there, and we as young people are addressing those problems in our own little way, but also making sure everybody, anybody who can listen, so that the impact is even greater, and it forces parliamentarians and other people in policy decision making roles to actually listen to what the young people are saying. So um, that said, is that we've got two positive ways that we have seen that young people engage, and like I said, it's the through government, parliament, policy making, and then through civil society or NGOs. Now, unfortunately, as we are all aware as well, young people in Africa, we have a lot of energy, and sometimes we can tend to be very, very frustrated by the fact that we are not participating, we're not engaged, and that leads us down some wrong paths. Now, what do I mean by the wrong paths? This is what I would call the third way that young people get engaged. That is not necessarily the right way of getting engaged. Frustration, you don't have water, you don't have lights, government, parliamentarians have told you things are going to get done, they don't get done. Young people, we tend to get frustrated and we revolt, riots, uprisings, as you can see in the picture on the slide. And what does that happen? That leads to mistrust of young people. And people say to themselves, oh my goodness, these young people, they're just rebels. If nothing goes right, what they want to do now is burn down the whole city because they are upset. And this also leaves young people very, very vulnerable to what I would call militia groups. So what happens is that because these militia groups or these rebel soldiers, etc., know the frustrations of us young people, they can use us. And I think I mentioned it earlier in the beginning that we can be easily manipulated by politicians because of our own frustrations and not seeing anything happening around us, and become disengaged, but get re-engaged by the wrong parties with the wrong ideas and the wrong ways of doing things. What I'm talking about is people who will then recruit young people into their rebel armies. And you find that in Africa, if you look at any of these terrorist groups, you look at the rebel armies fighting in DRC, you name it, a lot of these armies are a lot of the soldiers in these armies, or recruits, let me say recruits because some of them aren't even soldiers, but the recruits are young people under the age of 30, and some of them are even children, and we're talking about child soldiers. So this is very, very, very scary, that there are people out there that are waiting for us to be very frustrated, and so that they can latch onto that frustration and use us as young people to launch uprisings, coup d'etats, and civil wars that do not necessarily benefit the society as a whole. In Africa, what we should be striving for all the time is to resolve our issues peacefully. And anytime somebody comes to us and tries to get us to resolve our issues in a way that creates violence, tension, death, we should say absolutely not. This is not how we are going to engage, and we should absolutely refuse. We are civilians and we want to preserve life. And unfortunately, on the African continent, too many of us are recruited into these groups that do not preserve life and do not seek solutions. And to add to that is that a lot of young people then are disappointed at the end when they're fighting for these groups, and these groups, let's say, come into power, and they do the exact same thing as the previous government did, if not worse. And so the young people are now jaded, and they wonder what happened, all this bloodshed for what? And there's absolutely no improvement in the condition of youth or in their own condition that they thought they were fighting for. So I urge you, my brothers and sisters and young people across the African continent, is that when we get engaged, when we think about our engagement, let's think about positive engagement, peaceful engagement. That will definitely take us very far. But where we think about things that lead to engagement, that leads to mistrust, bloodshed, and war, I think we should take a step back and think, this is not me. This is not what I'm going to do as a young person on the African continent. It is time for a change. It is time for an African to be different. We can't keep being the only continent that every year there is a coup d'etat. So think about that. And then to finish off, I think one of the main important things that I wanted to talk about when I finished off is that I wanted to just encourage young people to say to them that you really can be a leader, a young leader, and you can be engaged and have your voice heard. But it is up to you. And unfortunately, we expect our leaders to do something for us. But it doesn't work that way. Let's engage with them on a positive note and talk to them. Like I said, and I'll say it again, some of these people are our parents or our grandparents. So they do care about our well-being in general. So let's come to them with the respect and with respect, and just to talk to them and conversate with them in a way that they can hear us, and then to bring our concerns to them, but also not wait for somebody to do something for us. It is very, very important to continually find ways that we can improve our own situation, because sometimes when somebody is not reacting or listening to you and you say, okay, fine, I get you don't want to help me, that is fine. You go out, you find your own way around a certain issue. That person will sit back and be shocked and say, wow, you actually are able to do this. And then they might even open up more doors and say, oh, wow, I didn't believe that this person can do this, but today they've shown me that they are able to. So let us make everybody believers of us African youth. Let us believe in ourselves, but let us also make other people believers of us, that they cannot do anything without us. So when I was at the African Union a few years ago when we were drafting the youth charter, I remember we had a SADC caucus. And in the SADC caucus, I remember some of the members saying, the slogan must be clear, nothing about us without us. And I think as African youth, we need to think about that statement. What does it mean when we say nothing about us without us? It means we should be the heartbeat of what is going on in our nations. We should know everything. We're the majority of the population. So everything that is happening out there is about us. And so we should be engaged. We should go out there and vote for our leaders. We should go out there and stand for elections and campaign. And most of all, as young people who are not campaigning for elections, etc., we must also be out there voting for our young people to get into these decision-making positions. So, from me, that's the presentation that I have for you in terms of just talking about youth and civic engagement on the African continent and what I have seen. I would love to take some questions. I don't know, Suleiman, what you want to do, but I do have questions that I know some of you submitted that I would like to go through. So I don't know if anybody has a live questions,
Yeah,
right?
maybe Bukar, we can discuss what you just say, because what is important about your speech is that you talked about many forms of civic engagement, and this kind of being implicated and being and to participate in civic activities are not very clear for young people, because most of the times we just talk about being engaged in many NGOs, and for some people, that is the only way to be engaged in that kind of activities. And in the other hand, we have the participation in politics, which remains one of the most issues we have as young Africans in all African countries without any exception. I and regarding what I see right now, because we're about to perform elections in Morocco, the regional elections, and one of the problems we have is that people are calling for the participation of young people. But as you said, we
Mm-hmm.
are frustrated. We are frustrated because there is two issues, two main issues. The first one is that we haven't enough means and tools to politically participate, and the second issue is that youth participation in politics is used right now as a slogan from the political parties. So they just use it as a convincing way to tell people you should vote for this political party because we are for youth, we are for its development, and we will provide young people with many advantages. And these two issues, it's what make us as young Africans, and it's what make me as young Moroccan not very not very excited to politically participate. I may encourage people, young people, to vote for parties and to express their opinions. But the problem is that we know that in order to perform many changes in our country or in our continent, we should be we should be a part of the game. We should integrate this game of politics. We should be able to let the others, to let the current politicians and the current leaders, to let them know about what are our problems, to let them know about our solutions. You talked about one important thing, that we should not consider these current politicians as an enemy, and we should sit on the table and tell them what are our needs and what are our solutions to the issues we are living in our community. But the problem
Mm-hmm.
is that we don't have such opportunities to tell them the truth. Our only way, and we trust in that way, is social media. We trust in that way because we saw the example of Tunisia, we saw the example of Egypt, and we saw how social media could is in your opinion the way that we can prove ourselves to these people, and to invite them to accept us as a partner of change, whether in politics, whether in economic, whether in social improvements, etc.
It's a very deep question, and I thank you for that question or those questions. The first one I'm going to address is being disheartened in terms of participating politically. Unfortunately, somebody has to take the bullet for the young people. As disheartened as we may be, some of us have to really kind of take that disheartened, I don't know how to say it in English, but take that and say to ourselves, okay, I'm frustrated, I don't want to be a part of this, nobody's going to listen to me, and be bullish and go out there and be the one who is going to trailblaze and make sure that the leaders hear us. I mean, if you go and look right now, I encourage everybody, because you're on the internet, to go and look at the ages of the people who formed the African Union. You will be in shock. 24, 26, 25, 23, right? That was an era where There were still grown-ups. There were still grown-ups, people who are older than them. But the youth were engaged, and they were not letting frustration pull them down. These are the same youth who, remember, were the forefront of ending colonialism. And imagine how frustrating for them that must have been. Let's look at other young people who have led movements in this world. Young people who have led movements that have toppled government. And I'm not talking about toppling government in terms of violence, but in a peaceful manner. And so you think about it and say, there's no anything good in this world is very difficult to do. And that's why we talk about leaders. We're not talking about followers. Anybody can follow when times are good. Anybody can follow and be happy. It's a leader, a true leader, who will stick by their course, rain or shine. So you have to ask yourself as young people, am I really a leader or am I just a follower? That's the first question you ask yourself. Secondly, you look, like I just said, you look at other young leaders that have come on this African continent and have passed. And I just want to talk about, for example, if you look at Nelson Mandela, will he stick to his course? When people arrested him, will he denounce his course of saying, I am against what you're doing to my people or other people of color? Apartheid is wrong. Or when times get tough and he gets arrested, is he now going to sit in jail and say, maybe I made a mistake? Oh my goodness, I've been sitting in jail for 10 years. For what? For other people to be free, right? So the most important thing is that not everybody is a leader. In our youthful engagement, not all of us can make it in this tough situation we're in. So you ask yourself, point blank, am I a real leader? And they always say it's lonely at the top. So when you feel frustrated, when you feel disgruntled, when you feel like you cannot go on, when you feel like there's no end in sight, when you feel like it's a long journey and it's lonely and what am I going to do? But you keep going anyway, even in that hardship, then, my friends, you are a true African youth leader. That's who we need. So any of those negative emotions that stir up in you as you are joining politics or trying to join politics, trying to engage the elders, etc., and time is moving and you feel like, oh my goodness, will it ever happen? If you get those emotions, I will tell you, then you are a leader. If you never feel uncomfortable, disheartened, ready to quit, then you are never a leader. You were never meant to be a leader. You are meant to be a follower. So at the end of the day, I'll just say, to answer that first part, is that please assess yourself and your own motivations and see if you can stick it through. Because that's what we need in Africa. People who will stick it through till the end. And then we will see change. Too many times we give up. And when we give up, that does not help anybody. So the second question or the second point, remark you made, is that it is so difficult to get these elders of ours into a room, to engage them, etc. So now I will say this, right? It's called relationship management. They do it in corporate all the time. In corporate all the time. You cannot go. Already people don't want to really talk to you. And they think you're a troublemaker. You cannot go guns blazing, as they say, and ready for a fight and say, I want to knock, I want to meet with you now, Minister of Youth, etc. My advice to young people is be very, very friendly. You're a relationship manager. You're trying to manage the relationship. Understand who you are talking to. Do your research. Understand. You know, when companies are, let's say a company is trying to acquire another company, and you guys know I'm in business school, so I do business a lot. But a company is trying to understand another company or acquire another company, etc. They do their due diligence. Do you know what that means? Due diligence. It means they do a stakeholder mapping. They see everybody who is who in that company. What is this person? What does this person like? What does this person not like? How do they interact? How is this person? Who is this person? The problem with us as young people, we believe we have a right to be listened to just because we are the big, whatever, the largest population number. But I beg to say to you, what about being clever about how you go about getting listened to? Get your stakeholder mapping. Understand who's in the Ministry of Youth. Where did they go to school? What do they like to eat? Do they have children? Where do the children go to school? Well, it looks like you're a spy or something, but this is what companies do. Your stakeholder analysis, right? Then you have something. Now, secondly, the best way to always engage people is in a low pressure environment. So if there are events, for example, and you know the minister is coming in, or somebody from the ministry or some government agency or the UN, try and go to these events, conferences, you name it. Maybe they have a luncheon or something they're hosting, and go and establish a relationship. Don't start by coming to the thing and say, you now have a chance to greet the minister, and you say, Minister, great, nice to meet you. Now I have a whole list of 10 million things I want to tell you that you should change for the youth. That will not get you anywhere very far. You need to go and shake the minister's hand. Nice to meet you. My name is this. Establish rapport. Now you remember, you have done your research, so you know what that minister or that person, you know where they went to school, you know what they studied, you know their background, you know all these things about them. Get them in a conversation. Get them in a conversation talking about them to show that you care about them as a person as well. They're not trying to be malicious to you as a young person. So you establish rapport, establish that friendship. That is the second thing you need to do as young people. We don't do it. We just want to be heard without understanding who we are talking to and caring about the people we're talking to. Then the third thing I will urge young people to do. Now you know who you're talking to, one, your stakeholder. Two, you have met them some way, somehow, established rapport through maybe meeting them through a meeting, a discussion, or inviting them to a dinner to speak or whatever it is. You've got them there now, and you've thanked them. You've established rapport. Even if you hate the guts of that minister, it's not time for you to show how much you hate that person and how they're not doing anything in your country. Nobody will ever listen to you if you start off by showing them how much you despise them or fighting them off the bat. So the third thing, now you've gotten your, like I said, your stakeholder, your rapport. Third, you move into the soft, low-hanging fruit of what you want to discuss with them. And when you move in like that, you're not fighting. You're saying, oh, there's this issue we have with this. Let us see how they respond. We cannot go guns blazing. Guns blazing are not going to help us, and they make people, I always say, when we go on social media, we are so angry. A lot of times, you mentioned social media's element. We're so angry and we're typing, blah, 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 and we tweet, blah, 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 this person sucks, that policy sucks, this one is going to kill us, I don't know, let's have a revolution and what. And I will point out to you one thing that is very important, is these revolutions that happen, the army was behind them. If you do not have the army behind you, because the armies wanted the people toppled as well. The army is not there, the government will clamp down on everything because they'll have the support of the army. And we know our armies can be very powerful. So what I want to say to you is, how about we come with a different approach of getting to know people, commending them for the little good they have, they always say in English, you find the silver lining in the dark cloud. And you will see people's hearts will open up to you, and they will better listen and engage with you because you are not fighting. Let's try and use another strategy and not fight all the time. So that's what I would advise. So that's for your remarks, the two ways that I would advise young people to engage and be heard.
Question goes this way. It's not as if our governments or our leaders in authority underestimates the power of the youth. They don't. They know the youth is exuberant, the youth is strong. That is how come, if you talk of, for instance, in Ghana, all the political parties, the two major political parties in Ghana, from the secondary to the university levels, they have small organizations which, right in the schools, right where the young people are in the universities and in the schools, they start to infiltrate them with their political ideologies. They start to use them. So most of the time, these young people come out of school and they are already flying with the ideologies of a certain party. For instance, it is, and I know it is everywhere within the African universities, and then now it's even going to the secondary schools where the political parties have groups. They sponsor, when it is student representative elections, the party A will sponsor the young man to win power. In return, the young man will make sure that anything that has to do with campaigning for that political party, he will definitely amass vote for them. That is one challenge we are faced with as a youth. That is one specific. Me, for example, when my first mentor I had to groom me politically, whilst I was in school, this man saw the energy in me, so he started using me. Anything that has to do, we formed a future leaders club in the school, only for him to infiltrate with his ideologies. You see, sometimes this is what our leaders do. How can we be able to stem away from the political ideologies of these our leaders? For instance, you come to Ghana, in our constitution, there is a clause that says that until you are 45 years, you can't run for president, which is very bad. It means we associate leadership with old age. That is what we do in Africa, you see, and it's very unfortunate. So how can we break these traditions? There is even a proverb in Ghana that says that the older you are, the wiser you are. Which, sorry, that's not the thing. So how can we build a front that transcends beyond the political ideologies of this group of old people? How can we make them understand that, look, any decision you make now, you are not making it for yourself, you are making it for us. We are the tomorrow. So involve us in the decisions. I believe those of our leaders who are in power today, they are in power today as a result of decisions those previous leaders made on their behalf. So how can we break that trend, especially at the university level, the way they try to use us? I'll be very grateful. Thank you once again for the opportunity.
We're supposed to be engaging, so it's good for other people to also share their ideas on the question that was asked.
To answer, I will try to answer the question from the man from Ghana. From my experience, even here in Nairobi, There's a program that took place. We call it Pan-African Congress for East African countries. It has about 9 countries from East Africa. I happen to be one of the rapporteur. This Congress we couldn't complete the Congress because of the rebellions of the youth. We can see that the politicians are already using the youth. They are giving them negative orientation. So at this Congress, which we had, about 3 hours ago, the youth from the University of Nairobi, some of this youth came up and said that no election. Why? Because they want money. We can see today our youth, their concern is money. When these politicians just go to the university, they just distribute money to them. So with that, they change their orientation. So this is my suggestion. I think organizations like YALDA and some other good organizations should start from secondary school or primary school. We should have a kind of a branch or a club in primary school so that I can give them correct orientation about politics. Because the fact is this: when you see any young people, any young man or young women that what do you want to be in future? Oh, I want to become a politician. It's not because they want to go and serve, but because to go and embezzle, to go and take money, because they believe that when you're a politician, you have money. I'm from Nigeria. I know what is happening in Nigeria. We are very rich, but the resources of the country is just in the hand of few people. And our youth today, sincerely, that's what they are thinking. Even our family values and so on. If you're a politician, a common councillor, maybe you just have a secondary school, and after 3 years in government, you don't build a house, people will be saying that, oh, you are not successful. So I think we have that capacity or the responsibility as YALDA and some other organizations to go and start a kind of club from primary school, or we can start secondary school, whereby we can change the orientation of these young people. So this is my submission. Thank you very much.
Believe if the closer, there is a saying, catch them young and they shall be yours forever. Definitely, as we are young now, and this is what we are facing. When our presenter was presenting his submission, he's made a profound statement that, look, until we prove to these people that we are ready, then you are not born a leader. So we, the young leaders across Africa, those of us that we know that this is the challenge we are facing, our mates. I have 3 of my colleagues I completed school with just because whilst they were in school, they were aligned to a certain political party in the school. Today they have jobs, they are driving good cars, they have all the luxuries of life. Because why? During national election, through their affiliation in school, they campaigned for the winning party, and today they are rich just by being politics from the universities. So we need to really go down to the root. From the primary school, we need to teach them the values of patriotism. I can tell you for a fact, no African youth today will tell you that he is ready to die for Africa, he is patriotic. Just a few of us. So we need to go down. We need to catch them young, and we shall be able to make that change that Africa needs. Thank you.
Is to enable young people to participate the way they want to participate. So when we grow older and we're not necessarily affiliated to parties or politics, etc., let us see ways that we can contribute in the universities, as well as, of course, when we catch them younger, so that people are not just hell-bent on, this is my only way out is through being a politician. This is my only way to get money. This is the only way to be greedy. I mean, sorry, we don't want to be greedy, but this is the only way to feed myself. Let me say that. Um, so my thing is that we need, this is the lack of positive role models in leadership today, and this is the lack of saying you can have security as an entrepreneur, you can have security in this profession. Look at what we have done or this has done and blah blah blah, and having these people come on campuses and be willing, just as the politicians do, to come and say, come work for my company, come and do this, engage in the right things in life, and I will give you jobs galore. You don't have to be a politician. So it is up to us to open up the space where people actually have choice. I think that's the problem. It's people feel they do not have a choice, and they feel that the only way for me to survive is to do things crookedly. But once they have choice and we enable that choice, because we don't speak for ourselves just for the now. Somebody, I think it was you, gentleman from Ghana, Elijah. I think it was you who mentioned that we, some people, past leaders, did something for us or for the current leaders to be where they are today.
Yeah.
So when we think about our engagement, we continue to think about, we are not going to give up. Too many times, and this is what somebody told me when I was involved in youth work. He said to me he's afraid that one day I'll grow older and I'll forget the young people or the plight of the young people. So I challenge us to say, let us not forget, because there are people out there who have forgotten us, who were as frustrated as you were when they were at university, and they maybe were not in politics, but as soon as they left, they're done. They're done with young people and helping, advising them, and giving them choice and opportunity. So let us not be those young people. Let us grow older, loving the youth and engaging in the youth, even if having a youthful attitude, no matter how old we get. So that's what I would always also suggest in the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish on the continent, just apart from growing younger, but also as we grow older, contribute.
Certain goal that we must achieve. For example, when we talk about youth participation, we must talk about democracy, about democratic systems in our African countries. And we should maybe think about democracy not only as a governmental system, but as a spirit, as a culture that every one of us must certain values related to democracy, related to many many values that will and principles that will get us as young people, and that will lead them as the next generation to take the lead of our continent. And here I can also replicate the same model for civic engagement. For example, for now currently we are appealing young people to vote. We are appealing young people to participate in NGOs. We are calling for young people to participate in elaborating and providing policies that will make their life improve, and that will make the community improve as well. But if we haven't that culture of participating, that culture of bringing value added from the beginning, even that there is a lot of people that we are calling us to contribute, we won't contribute, or we will contribute in bad way. So for me, maybe even in youth civic engagement, it's something that we should teach to the children in schools. In schools, we should involve children in many community activities. We should tell them that democracy, we should explain them what is democracy. Even but when we talk about that, it seems that it will be complicated for children to understand what is democracy and what are the democratic processes. But I think it's feasible. It's something possible, and that's why we should maybe invest more in education to to sensitize and to leverage the awareness about such issues.
Thank you. One point I also want to make clear is, you see, as I speak with you now, I'm currently taking part in the President Obama Young African Leadership Initiative Regional Learning Program. For the whole of the month of August, we are being camped in Ghana Institute of Management. We are being sponsored to learn about leadership, ethics, leadership in the African context. And to tell you the truth, the whole we are 100 people from all the West African countries, especially the Anglophone countries. And to tell you the truth, for the past 2 weeks, all the things we are being taught, I'm so inspired. The more I learn, I ask myself, why must it be the US government? Are they not being for Obama bringing such an initiative to train the youth to be ready for leadership, to train the youth to understand the ethics of leadership? Would an African government or even the AU or ECOWAS, can't they organize such programs which will help us? I'm telling you, for the whole of this month, this is what we are learning. We are being camped in Accra to learn this ethics, leadership skills. Why can't one thing I ask myself every day when I go in for classes is, so if President Obama he finishes his tenure and he's not able to sustain the project, what becomes of Mali? We need to be able to first and foremost also make AU, ECOWAS, all the regional blocks we have to understand that, look, start training us, make us ready, engage us for the leadership ahead.
Future of our continent, and we must be trained for the leadership we will
I'm interested about the whole conversation, and I think it was a noble initiative. I will start by backing up what my friend Ayodele has said, because we are from the same branch here, and as a branch in Kenya, we've been engaged in civic activities. I think at least to the capabilities of our making, we've been able to be involved in civic engagement. And what I would say is that the youths in Africa need to understand that they need to civic engagement as a responsibility, because we all understand and I hope that the fact that we are the shapers of our own destiny in some sense, and in the sense that we know ourselves better. So my contribution will be that African view civic engagement, and civic engagement as I'm getting, and as we've been discussing, I'm getting that we are looking at the political aspects of life, and if the youth regardless of the perceptions that have been created by politicians who've come before us, we need to transform the way we view politics, the way we relate with those who are ahead of us, and those who've come ahead of us. So my point, what I'm stressing is viewing or taking civic engagement as a responsibility, and maybe not as an engagement, because as an obligation. I mean, because we know how obligations sometimes may not fare well with some of us. So if we take civic engagement and engage ourselves and taking it as a responsibility, we are bound to secure a future that is doomed if we take this other direction. So I will say that, and I'm happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
About the participation of young people in elaborating policies. Currently, and we can feel that, and we can touch that in our realities. The fact that there is some parts of civil society and NGOs that are working on policies that are considered from the government as enemy, and they don't understand, and they don't accept the fact that there is a part or people from the civil society who are contributing and making policies rather than them. Even that we have that intention of providing some support to them in helping them achieving the goals they have in our communities. So for you, Bekamu, how could we as young people and also as actors in many NGOs and in civil society call governments to accept our contributions in making policies?
Implemented or are implementing national youth policies, or are in the process of implementing the African Youth Charter in various forms. So you have to understand what type of a government are you dealing with, because some of these governments, they have avenues that allow NGOs to participate in terms of policy making. They will call what we call youth caucuses, youth seminar, youth meetings, youth conferences, where they invite young people of various NGOs to come, and they give the topic to hear the young people and help them in terms of the formulation of policies. So those are what we call the youth-friendly governments that actually do engage young people considerably, and you can see the impact that makes in terms of the policies that are implemented at a high level and that are discussed in Parliament. Now, when you look at difficult governments, right? Governments that are not so youth friendly and are threatened by young people and what they say. I think as youth NGOs, it just goes back to what I said earlier, that you have to have your voices heard. When there's an issue, you have to engage in terms of bringing it to the public eye, so you garner more support for that issue that you're trying to address. And by doing that, you bring it to the attention of the parliamentarians or the leaders or the legislators that are responsible for helping formulate these policies. Another avenue that I also discussed was the ability for you to develop relationships with these leaders that we have, and trying to get inroads through that, getting to know them better, establishing the rapport, and then presenting them your issues or something that you, because like I said, please, young people, let's not present issues. And that's why I challenged you guys when you had some questions, and I said, why don't we each answer questions within our group, because that's how we find solutions. Because too many times we present our issues without saying, okay, minister so and so or legislator so and so, this is my issue and this is the solution. So let's come up with issues, but with solutions that we can show our leaders. The third way that I don't think I've talked about yet this evening is engaging our regional bodies in some shape, form, or manner, or the United Nations in some shape, form, or manner. Because when you look at these regional bodies or multilateral continental bodies, they are for consensus building. Unfortunately, they struggle in keeping our countries accountable, but at least they can help bring the voices of the voiceless up to the forefront. And if you engage with them, because they're non-political, it might be easier to go knocking on the door of an ECOWAS or or a SADC or a UN, UNECA, for example, to talk to them about what you have seen, help them with their research in certain topics, so that when they actually publish documents that they're going to present to the government bodies, because what they do is that they bring the government bodies together out with the research that they have done, and they give governments ideas for policy making. So if we can't get through to our government leaders, at least let's get through them indirectly through using bodies or entities like the UN or the regional bodies. And that is one thing that YALDA, and I know some of you here are YALDA people, that is one thing why we strongly have the is it the intergovernmental organizations liaison, something like that, and the research director. That relationship is there because we want young people to engage with these intergovernmental bodies, because you can feed information into them and you can feed your grievances into them that they will take to your leaders without you having to participate with your leaders directly. And as you have seen, Suleiman and other people that I've introduced to UN people, they're actually open to talking to you or these SADC people as well. But unfortunately, human beings or Africans, you cannot talk to them only once. You have to actually be on their backs, just hang on there until they engage you in a way that you're happy with. So, so those are the three main ways that I feel as youth who are involved with NGOs and in this youth movement and trying to get their issues and solutions. And now I will be very clear, issues and solutions heard, is this is the way that we can present them to our leaders through these various mechanisms.
Was how can we promote civic engagement among young people in Africa?
Wanted to speak about the way the politics in Africa are training the young leaders today in their bad ideologies. I think this is a problem. Don't get me wrong, but I think this is a problem of mentality. We need really to fight against that by starting in our own environment, changing things. Because with my own analysis, I think that Africa has some problems with uh, the mentalities they are leading, or with the mentalities they are leading people, because it's something that there is greediness, of course, and we have also something like I have to serve myself. Selfishness is really inside the leading people of Africa. So this is what we need to do as young people. We need to change the things. We need to change the mentalities in our own environment before going to all those people, or before waiting for all those policies to come to us. And by there we can really change the things, because the problem of Africa is mentality. People always look to serve their self. Okay, so this is what I wanted to add to the question of my brother. Thanks.
Thank you. Matimo, you didn't introduce yourself. We don't know who you are, where you're coming from, etc. But we thank you for the contribution.
Okay. Yeah, okay, let me introduce myself. Okay, excuse me, let me introduce myself. My name is Matimo Nake. I'm a student and in communication here in Lomé, Togo. I'm calling from Togo.
Oh.
Great,
Merci
welcome.
beaucoup.
To the webinar who's not here, who was wondering how could we promote civic engagement among young. In another term, how could we convince young people to be active in civic activities? I guess that we talked about many forms of civic engagement through NGOs, through policy making, etc. But what could be attractive for us as young people that will make us contribute in that sense?
To the answers of the questions. So if anybody in the audience feels they can take this question and answer it, please go ahead, because that's how we build leaders.
Our leadership, encouraging us, making the civil service attractive as possible. Because you go into civil service and you sometimes find it very, very unfortunate, I would say, to even have chosen such a path to address your concerns. And I believe that is why one of the reasons why you look at the issue of Boko Haram today. Over 90% of members of Boko Haram are young people. These are people who for years they have tried to use civic means of engagement for their leaders to also see their problem and then be part and parcel of finding solutions. And then for years, no response. Leaders think, oh no, it's unfortunate, and they believe that is the only means. So it is the responsibility, one of our current leaders, to understand and then make civic participation of the youth very attractive for us. Thank you.
And the question is, why is it always hard for African leaders to pay serious attention to youth empowerment? And maybe for this question I will ask another question in another way, rather than saying why. It would be: is it true that the African leaders doesn't pay serious attention to youth empowerment? I may ask you all regarding the communities you're representing. For example, here in Morocco, I may start by myself talking about here in Morocco. This kind of saying that Morocco leaders does not pay serious attention to youth empowerment is not true. Because as I stated before, we rely on social media, on real effective platforms that we are using right now, and that through these platforms we transmit our voice, we transmit our ideas. And there is many examples that show that here in Morocco, when there is a movement of young people that are capable of addressing a message, but this message should be relevant, we come through having the attention of these Moroccan leaders that are able of changing the situation and discussing with us. So if I may say, for us in Morocco, we can say that we have this issue in a certain way. As we have right now these political leaders and also these business leaders that are very involved in social media. And once, for example, there is mass of persons, of people who are asking a question or asking for a change, they reply. There is somehow certain feedback from them. And then we can talk about the fact that they will achieve this change or not. That's the question. But mainly there is certain feedback, which is good. I would be interested to know how is going on in your countries, in your different countries. Did African leaders are involved in social media or in another ways in order to listen to the youth, and did they pay attention to the needs that are addressed by youth people?
Civic engagement. I want to support my brother that spoke earlier. To me, another way to make civic engagement attractive to young people is to, actually in our schools, both primary and secondary school, there's a program called social study where they learn about civic engagement and others. But to me, it's high time the curriculum reviewed. To me, I think, because I've been a teacher, I've taught in schools, in both primary school and secondary school. The curriculum, what they are teaching these people, they should review to the modern day issues. So with that, it will go a long way in helping these young people to know what to do in terms of civic engagement. So that's for the other one. Now about the youth empowerment, as I said, I will speak for Nigeria. I work in Nigeria, high school in Nairobi, in Kenya. In Nigeria, I believe the government is really working very hard on the youth empowerment. But the problem is corruption. In the yearly budget, we can see that much money, money has been given to youth empowerment. Then we discover that few people are benefiting from this. Very few. Politicians would pick their own people and they'll put them there, instead of engaging the right people to work, to be empowered. And apart from this, the kind of, for example, in Nigeria, there's a program called NYSC, that's a National Youth Service Corps. It is compulsory that when you finish university and you are under 30 years old, you must serve the country for a year. And doing that service, is a kind of empowerment, because you will be thought you can pick any handwork you can learn. And also, a part of that, you will be posted to rural area whereby you can mingle with the people, know their feelings, and also you'll be able to do a kind of community service. So if all the countries in Africa can do this kind of thing, and they do it well, and make sure that they block all leakages for corruption, it will go a long way in building young people that will have a good attitude to work, that will not be thinking of how do I make money alone, or how do I embezzle, how do I enrich myself. But their basic motive will be, how do I make an impact in the life of others. So in Nigeria, to me, so far so good. The country is doing well, but the politician, the corrupt politician and corrupt civil servants are not making it to work well. So this is my contribution. Now, let me just introduce myself better. My name is Ayodele John Alunge. So I'm the newly appointed Publicity and Communication chairperson for YALDA International. And I reside in Nairobi. I'm a member of YALDA Nairobi. Thank you very much.
And the question was, I like the question because actually it's a way, and it's the time to make a call for all young people in the world, not only in Africa. And the question was actually for this guy, how can Asian young people participate in promoting civic engagement in Africa? And for me, what I understood from that question is the fact that he's asking how could young Asian contribute in other than Asia in the world in terms of civic engagement, and also how could young Africans contribute in Asia as well. And what I liked about this question, and I say that it's a way to call young people for being active, is the fact that we are now in treating one of the issues that concern all young people around the world. We cannot say that youth civic engagement is an issue only in Africa. We cannot say that youth civic engagement is an issue only in Morocco or in Kenya or in Ghana, etc. But it's an issue, it's a global issue that we are all talking about. So how an Asian young man can contribute to what we are treating right now is sharing of experiences. Maybe as a young man from Morocco, if I experience some issue regarding these activities, regarding youth participations, it will be good to transmit my experience to the other countries, to the other youth in other countries, because this kind of situations could be repeated in other countries, and it will be good if they have certain lessons from us, and also if we can use the same solutions as the others by adapting them to the context and to the culture of the country, of course. And this is for me a call to bring all the young people around the world about on this subject, and to start thinking about global solutions that can be used in anywhere, in any country.
contribute to Africa as well, and I guess establish some sort of collaboration, because you never know what nuggets of wisdom you can get from outside the continent. So we shouldn't just be insular, but also looking at solutions to our issues in Latin America or Asia, etc. And one of the things that I have found that is really great is organizations like World Assembly of Youth. Um, if you're not on their newsletter, you can get on their newsletter, and it's absolutely great because they send out different events, different initiatives that young people are doing all over the world, including national youth councils all over the world. So I encourage you to find organizations like this. If it's that something that interests you, is what are other people doing around the world? They are organizations that try and bring youth actors, youth leaders together so that they can share experiences. And in fact, there is a UN youth program which is very what's the opposite of transparent? It's very obfuscated how young people are chosen to be a part of this program. So every year the UN brings in young people from all our countries to come and participate. I mean, I saw the list of names from my country, and it's one of the most transparent countries in the world. And I know the various actors in the youth space here. And I didn't know who some of these people were. I've never seen them at a youth organization meeting or nothing. And yet they went to the UN to participate. So things like that is challenging, knowing what's going on in the world. Events like this, the one I just spoke about, and challenging a government to understand what is their selection criteria for us to go and participate globally and voice our issues. Because now when we have people who are representing us, who are not really representing us because they're the child of so and so or the cousin of so and so, our issues or our sharing of experiences become shallow. But what we need, both on the international, regional, and country level, is proper representation, real leadership. And I'll say it again, but it comes from us challenging. I went to challenge our ministry and say, what is this? This is not transparent. You must tell us how you selected these people. And that's the thing, is that they don't like me coming to that office when I start causing trouble like that. But it forces them then to look at the drawing board and say, wow, we don't want to be exposed for sending so and such as daughter or son or whatever. So those are the kinds of things or pointers that I would give around this global interaction and avenues for us to interact globally with other people going through these same issues that we're going through.
Positive changes to their countries, like Kagame in Rwanda, to overstay in power in order to continue developing these changes in fear of others coming and ruining it. So, what do you think about that?
And try and have a shot. Somebody have a shot. There's some people who haven't spoken here, so
And by the tenets of democracy, no matter the virtues, no matter the development that any leader brings, Once the constitution says that this is the amount, the tenure you have to stay on. If you really love your country, if you really love, and one thing I always say is, look, we are human beings. We can die at any time. So as a true leader, who believes and who is working with a vision, you need to carry your people along. You need to, first and foremost, even before you start, have a succession plan in mind. We had a speaker at the Yale Regional Training Center who came all the way from University of Notre Dame, Professor McHardy, and he made a profound statement that if you're a leader, when you lead in fear, you will lead to fail. However, when you lead, I will requote that statement before I finish my submission. He made a very profound statement, and I believe that is it. As a true leader, before you even implement your strategies, you should begin to ask yourself, if I'm not there today, who is going to work on what I have started? Who is going to finish the work I have started? I believe that is what any true leader have to do. You don't have to think if you are not there, then what you have started, nobody will finish. It basically, if you are a leader and you start thinking that way, what it basically means is that you when you started, you didn't even plan of leaving. You made your mind that you want to stay as long as you like, which to me is quite unfortunate that any African, and most especially it is the African leaders. You want to tell me the good leaders that the Western world have had, the good leaders they have had, they had to overstay. And I go to Professor McHardy's statement. He says, I quote, if you lead people through fear, you will have little respect. But if you lead people through respect, you have little to fear. I unquote. And I want to take it again for all my listeners out there. If you lead people through fear, you will have little respect. But if you lead people through respect, you will have little to fear. And it is very phenomenal. You all agree with me that most of these heads of states, most of these leaders who believe, even though they are doing good jobs, they believe they have to stay on power. If they are not there, nobody can finish the work. These are leaders who are always in fear. They are always in fear of something happening at any time. And if you are a true leader and you believe you are a human being, anything can happen to you at any time. Why would you cling on to power? Why would you think if you are not there? What do leaders do? Leaders carry their people along. So this is one point we have to state clearly to our leaders today. If you think you have a plan for us, whilst you implement the plan, and the plan is a very good plan, is in the interest of the nation, train somebody, have in mind somebody that any particular time can succeed. And let me tell you the truth, this is one challenge. People, I'm very frank when I'm speaking my mind about issues concerning African youth and then development. When our former President John Evans Atta Mills, took reins of power, he got power in the year 2009. He chose a young, vibrant vice president in the person of our current president, who is John Mahama. Unfortunately, we lost our president, and the mantle of leadership had to fall on the vice president. Today, the vice president is the president of Ghana, which is John Mahama. However, I believe our former president, the late John Evans Satamios didn't really plan very well. And today, John Mohammed's government is facing so much challenges because the very manifesto which they are using, they call it the Better Ghana agenda. This is an agenda which was fabricated by the late president. So this is one mistake always our leaders do get it wrong. And I believe as we talk, we involve our leaders in civic participation. This is one major point we have to let them know, that whatever plan you have for us, carry us along. Think of a successor. Think of when, as you, most of our leaders think they can't die. That is how sometimes I'm made to believe. They think
Yes.
once they are presidents, they they won't die. And so things happen and then they leave, and then everything they have started today, that is what Libya is facing. The youth, the citizenry was never ready. They were never ready to govern Libya because, one, the mistake of the leader who was Gaddafi also didn't even have a succession plan in mind. People always say he had a succession plan. I always tell people, no, this man didn't have a succession plan. And that is one thing most of our leaders today do. Thank you.
Hello?
Well, thank you,
Wow.
thank you a lot.
Wow.
It was a
Hi.
great contribution. I guess Ayodel, you
Yeah.
have.
I want to support what the man from Ghana I just said. But I think we should look inward as we are thinking about this. How are we supporting, or what are we doing about student unionism on campus? Do you know what I mean? The student government. In some universities, even in Nigeria, here in Kenya, the student union government, the people there, they don't want to leave. Some of them, they will go, they will graduate, they will come back. Now, I won't mention, even in my country, some can spend 10 years on campus. So because they want to be there.
Wow.
Yeah. Even in Nairobi here, I think we have that experience also. Because they believe that they are the only one that can do this. So now what is YALDA doing, in catching these people, in influencing this orientation? For example, in the University of Nairobi, during the last election, I think we tried to do a kind of handbill that, about election, giving people a kind of power to elect the right people. No, actually, we started late. We couldn't achieve anything. So I want to suggest that YALDA should think how we can influence the student union government. Because if you do this, all these people in training, after spending 10 years or 7 years over there, they go there and contest for presidency or maybe a senator, and they'll be there. So that orientation will go on and on. So I'm supporting what he said, that we should always have a kind of succession plan. When we are not there, we will take over. We should work as a team, not that, oh, I'm the only one that can do this. And that's what we have in Africa. And it's now going deep down to our government, our student union government. So when they leave, that orientation will continue and they will go. So we should think to have a plan in our branches, how we can be part of the student union government and influence them positively. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank you, Ayodele.
Thank you. People can lead us to a better future. I just would like to have your feedbacks about this code before we finish the session. So maybe we're gonna start by Victor.
I believe we've tried to have this done in the spheres that we allocated. So I think answering the question that has just been asked, or the contributions that have been called for, it's a matter of preaching this word to the people who are around us. And I'm a believer of the fact that the simple things that we do, and the influence that we can create around the places that we are an important thing, an important tool that we can use to transform Africa. And now, in the context of civic engagement, as I earlier said, we've tried to in Kenya here, and through the YALDA, University of Nairobi, we've tried to do it in campus. We've also done it out of campus, where we've had mentorships in primary schools around, 2 as at now, and we've had to take a break because of the end of semester exams. So what I'm saying is that, for instance, when we are out in the schools, in one of the schools, one of them we offer voluntary teaching. In the others, in the other one, we do mentorship. And I can clearly recall that in the events we've had, in the mentorship programs we've had, in one of the mentoring activities we've had, is that we try to look at Africa and you see in the manner that these young children can understand. We tried to bring and what's the word, to make them understand what Africa needs, the kind of leaders that Africa needs. And we did this by letting them tell us on who is the ideal leader, and who are the examples or icons as far as being great leaders is concerned. And examples were given. So what I would say is that awareness, we have to create this awareness, and I think we just started it. It's something nice that we are doing. So the awareness needs to be created relentlessly and tirelessly, as much as we possibly can. And with that, you can be sure that there'll be a diffusion. There'll be a diffusion of this. What do I call it? Of this, I don't. Fever should not be the word, but there'll be a diffusion of this message that people need to be aware of the circumstances, the political circumstances that surround them, and in so doing, will achieve effectiveness in doing what the potential that lies in us. A speaker once talked to us in one of the many events we've had. The international conference we had, that in everyone lies a deposit of great potential. So it should be a message that should be told to Africa and African youth, that the destiny, this Africa that everyone is longing for, and I hope everyone that is listening here can attest to this, lies in our hands, and it's upon us to manipulate it and see that we attain it. So I will also suggest that it's up to governments to support the African youth, because again, we may not do it all by ourselves. The African youth can be supported, and I have seen this in my country that the government is on has made measures to include the youth in running parastatals, in running. It has provisions for youth in the various departments in government, and I think this is a step that if it is agitated more for, if it is pursued uh, as much as possible, it will yield the results that we are now calling for. And and now finally, that so that we achieve it in the context of Africa, I think it's a matter of now joining hands together. There are campaigns that, like YALDA University of Nairobi, we are running not we are running, but we are part of the State of the Union. If we can have all members of YALDA in Africa to be part of this, I'm sure we can achieve, because it's all about the instruments of the African Union, the charters that have been signed but not yet ratified. So it's a matter of us joining hands, and I believe when people are aware about, when governments are aware that people are aware of this thing, they'll definitely be triggered to work it out for the African people. I think that should be my.
Amazing.
Last word from Bukamo, which was our keynote speaker today. And
Well, thank you everybody for attending this session, and I'm so glad it's recorded so that everybody else who missed can hear. And I'm very excited to have heard from all over Africa. I mean, north, east, west, southern. It's been a really great discussion, and I hope everybody is left feeling excited to be engaged or to be responsible or obligated. I'm using all the words that I had, that we have a civic obligation. And I think that's where you ask yourself whether you're a leader or you're a follower. So if you're a leader, it's a civic obligation to participate, to go and vote, to go and start an NGO, to go and mobilize young people. When Ban Ki-moon said young people can mobilize the world, it is very true. But we do it in a space where we're calm and collected, and we win people over with what they can see that we can do. Again, I will say to you again, believe in ourselves and make them believe in us. It's just been so amazing. I actually was writing to Suleiman saying that these YALDA discussions, there are people who in YALDA, we talk about getting things done and logistics and all this all the time. But these discussions, they're so enriching to the spirit of what we're trying to do and give us more ideas on who we are. And we get to meet each other on a platform where we're not organizing things or tying loose ends and what of the organization, but it's sharing thoughts and discussions. That I was asking Suleiman, I said that this should continue. This shouldn't be the end of the discussion. We should have another one and even have more people involved or listening. Even if they're not contributing, at least they will be listening to see what contribution they can make. And by doing that, we're actually doing our civic obligation as well. So thank you so much, everybody. I think some of you still want to continue the discussion, so I won't interrupt that anymore. So please go ahead, continue the discussion. Post on social media what you have heard, and please send us that quote, Elijah. It was so amazing. The respect and fear quote. I won't quote it now, to not embarrass myself, but Hashtag Youth Day, hashtag YALDA Morocco, hashtag YALDA Africa. Please post, post, post. And it's been phenomenal. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night and have a good rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Bikamo. Thank you for your contribution and for your rich presentation. It was really great to have you among us for this discussion. I may ask you if you have last contributions. I think Ayodel.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it's not contribution. The Elijah from Ghana should try to send the quote. I couldn't get the quote.
Yeah, exactly. It just sent it to me, and it says that if you lead people through fear, you will have little respect. But if you lead people through respect, you will have little to fear. I will send it to all of you because it's really great.
Then again, sorry, please. And as Bukamu said, the Twitter is there. Let's keep on tweeting, and also the WhatsApp group also is there. Also, I've been putting many things on WhatsApp, so I'm happy to be here as well. Thank you very much, Suleiman.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your contributions. And the best solutions for our continent in terms of economics or politics or also for social issues. And it was really great to have you in this discussion, and all the contributions were very, very impressive. So I thank all of you, and maybe I will give you another appointment for the common activity.